Hello, and welcome to the Investor Guys Podcast, the ultimate podcast for serious real estate investors in the know. Join your host, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills, as they share their expert insights, strategies, and tips to help you succeed in the world of real estate investing. Get ready to level up your investment game with the Investor Guys Podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Bill Barnett and Kevin Mills.
Hey, Bill, how's it going?
It's going great, Kev. Welcome in, everybody, to the Investor Guys Podcast. Have a great weekend, brother.
I had an amazing weekend. It was super busy for me because we are wrapping everything up in Central Florida, headed back home to Palm Beach. Literally tonight, I'm driving down with a load of stuff and coming back up tomorrow with another load of stuff because we've accumulated so much stuff in the last 6 months. We've even got 4 cars here now. So I've got to get 4 cars back down to Palm Beach. It's a 3-hour drive, but I'm going to be back and forth for the next couple of days. But this is hopefully the last show from this home studio. So the last time you'll be looking at this blank wall, maybe a different blank wall, but it's the last one for this blank wall. It's funny because there used to be a picture back here. And every time my daughter comes into this room, she's like, Daddy broke the wall because there's no picture up there. So it's stressing her out that there's no picture. So as soon as we're done with this, I can put that picture back up and she can be happy.
So I'm curious. I know that you're a car collector. So are you bringing all the rides down to Palm Beach?
All the cars that are in California will come to Palm Beach. The ones that are in Texas, the ones that are in Ohio, the ones that are everywhere else, they'll stay where they are. But all the ones that are in California will come here, including the RV, which is still in Florida, as well as the motorcycles. Are you a motorcycle rider?
No, I'm not.
No? So we got to get you on a bike. But I've got a handful of motorcycles that I'll be bringing out as well. I may drop off a motorcycle in Austin because my little brother who's there loves to ride, and I've got brothers in Oklahoma City who also love to ride, so I might just leave one there so I can go riding with them. So
my middle brother, when he was 16, got T-boned by a guy that ran a stop sign and launched him face first into a gravel parking lot. And almost died from all the gravel in his mouth and throat. And he had just gotten his senior ring. They had to cut his ring off because it had gravel. I was kind of like, first time I saw him, it just looked like a tiger had attacked him or something.
Yeah.
It was just skin from the top of his head down to about his navel, just horribly. I was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, knock on wood. I've never had a wipeout or anything. I've dropped one bike once, and it was here in Florida actually. In a gale wind, it just literally blew me sideways into the mud, and then I had to push it through the ditch until I could find level ground to get it back up onto the road. But that's my only experience with being down on a bike. I also, though, only ride it for fun. I'm not out there all the time. I'm not zigzagging in and out of traffic. I'm not on the freeway. I used to ride it up the coast when I was in California. I'd ride it out to wine country. I would throw it on the back of the truck or throw it in the back of the RV and go on a vacation, and we just ride it around. It wasn't something that I did all the time. So I think that's probably what's kept me from dumping the bike a few times.
All right. So the reason we talk about stuff like that, and next week, and maybe Wednesday, we're going to do some lifestyle stuff just for fun.
Next Monday, let's do lifestyle.
Okay.
That gives you some time to get some photos and stuff together. Wednesday, let's talk about projects that I'm working on.
Okay. So much of that is just having the ability to do that because you got a little extra cash and fun things that you want to do and play with and toys and doodads, as Kiyosaki calls them. But being in a position where you can do that and it not affect your family, not affect your business, that's when the appropriate time is to have fun with that kind of stuff. So there you go. So what's on the agenda today, sir?
One thing that really just blew me away, and we just talked about this a minute ago, Lucky Jeans filed bankruptcy today. And they are just one of a number of companies that the coronavirus has just blown out. They've just, decimated. And to put things in perspective, it feels like we've been in this lockdown for forever. We're halfway through the year, but most of us went into this quarantine, pseudo-quarantine lockdown, been different in every state, every county, even every city. But all this started about middle of March 15th, I think it was. And we are just now at the beginning of July. So we are looking at 3.5 months that we have been out on quarantine. Now, what really strikes me every time I hear, and Lucky Jeans is just the latest, for the last 2 months, we've been hearing about companies filing bankruptcy. And I don't understand how a company like Lucky Jeans or General Nutrition Company or any of the other ones that have filed bankruptcy don't have enough of a budget put together where they can stand the lean times as well as the rich times. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense. And that's what I want to talk about today, is making sure that as an individual, you have a budget put together to where you've got at least 6 months put aside for whatever emergency might come along. 6 months to support your life. Now, not your lifestyle necessarily, but to be able to pay your mortgage where you live, to be able to pay your rent, your bills, your food, your children's school bills, if you've got children in school, whatever it is, but 6 months worth of that, and then focus on being able to pay your business debts as well. You need to have, and I'm sure Bill does this as well, but I call it a contingency fund. Every single one of my properties has a contingency fund. And I build that into my numbers every single time. And I'm talking about buy and hold properties. It's not necessary for a flip property. But for your buy and hold.
Flips all the time. Absolutely.
What's that?
I do it for flips all the time. For the contingency
fund. So I build in basically a contingency fund. I plan on having extra money left over from my taxes. I plan on having extra money left over from my maintenance fund, from everything, so that when I have a surprise, and usually it's a maintenance surprise, there's money already available for that property. But if we have an issue to where, say, the vacancy factor cranks up because jobs left that city overnight, whatever it is, okay, I can take the money from that contingency fund and support that property for a period of time without having to come out of pocket on my own and without having to lose that particular property. And we're going to elaborate a little more on that, but I want to give Bill a say here.
Well, I absolutely believe in contingency, and if you're doing a flip, you've got to have contingency money built in there, because especially when you first get started, I think you ought to have about 10% of your rehab budget. So not of the total project, but just of the rehab budget. So you got a $30,000, $40,000 rehab budget. You ought to have 10% of that as contingency, because it's so easy, no matter how good you are at budgeting, to miss something a little bit. The HVAC that looks like it's just in fabulous shape, and then you get it and it doesn't work right. And I had this on the other day on an appliance. It cracked me up. My refrigerator went out last week. And I have a really good friend that HVAC guy, does a ton of work for us. I called Todd and I'm like, hey, dude, I think this thing's just low on Freon. And I said, come take a look at it. And he said, okay, well, here, shoot some pictures of where there's a couple of main labels. Shoot a couple of those and send them to me. I'm like, okay, fine. So I do that, and he calls me and he goes, is this a joke? And I went, no. What are you talking about? He goes, Bill, that refrigerator was built in the mid-90s. I'm like, yeah, I know that. He goes, well, it takes R12. It's about $600 a gallon or a pound. You can find it. I'm like, okay, that's all I need to know. Time to go buy a new fridge. And so, stuff like that pops up where just something happens. And on a rehab, you're going to have things pop up. I was doing a fourplex here not too long ago, and it had siding on the outside of it, like hardy board, and down toward the bottom of it, it had dry rotted at the very bottom. So I told the lead, I was like, hey, go up about 2 feet maybe above the rot, the dry rot, and just bandsaw it, just pop it right across, pop it off, and then we'll put in a new section and we'll be fine. So he does that. Well, as he's cutting it, the code enforcement people come up, and I'm like, that shouldn't be any big deal. And he said, well, it wouldn't. I wasn't there, obviously. He said it wouldn't be, except for the fact that when I cut that piece off, the guy is standing right beside me, and we saw that there was some rot had gotten into the studs. He said, so he made me tear off the entire side of the fourplex, and we're going to have to do a ton of work on that. All right, so totally unexpected, and not something that you can avoid. Just pops up, and it might have been $2,000, $1,500. It wouldn't, but it was not part of the budget. And so what you look at is you've always got to have some wiggle room in your rehab budget, because things are likely to pop up that you just don't ever think about at that particular time. Something can literally happen while we've had foundations here in Texas move on a property, not between purchase or between going under contract and closing, but between the time we closed while we're rehabbing it, we've had foundations move. So those things just happen, and you got to have some contingency money built in there. I suggest a minimum of 10% of the rehab budget to put yourself in shape so you don't have to panic. And look, when it's over with, if you hadn't used it, then there's profit money. If you're using hard money or private money and you borrowed, and that borrowing includes the contingency money, then again, when it's over with, you've already got additional money to be able to pay back on the note. So it's a good habit to get into.
We're going to take a break real quick, but when we come back, I want to talk about setting up contingency, how you do that for the lean times. I mean, right now we'll get back to it in a second. Let me go ahead and take this break.
Thank you for watching the Investor Guys podcast.
The Investor Guys podcast will be back shortly.
Absolution X, limited editions, lifestyle apparel like none other. Get yours today at absolutionx.com.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at caymank.com.
Get ready for power, for success, for solutions and answers. It's all in one place. www.reallykevin.com. Education, opportunities, coaching, and so much more.
And we're back, and we have been talking about how so many companies have gone under because of the coronavirus. And I want to point something out real quick. I'm wrapping up here in Central Florida. Coronavirus for me, and I know it hit a lot of people hard. I mean, we're seeing companies, file for bankruptcy. I'm seeing lots of mom and pop restaurants and businesses, literally, they're going to be shuttering their doors for forever. I know some of you who are watching this may have lost your job. You may have, at very least be fighting, to make ends meet. And I'm sorry, I really am. Honestly, though, for me, and Bill's probably got his own story. Coronavirus has kind of been a vacation for me. I mean, it has been super, super easy. Everything we've done. I was thinking the other day, and I'm wearing a shirt now, but I'm wearing pants, but I'm not wearing long pants. In 12 months, in 6 months that I've been here, I don't think I have worn a pair of long pants, no Dockers, no slacks, no nothing, because I haven't had any formal business meetings or anything else. I've literally been in shorts, through this whole coronavirus and through the whole, 3 months leading up to this that we've been since we moved to Florida. It has been a mini vacation for me. I'm kind of looking forward to getting back to working. I miss going to the business meetings. I miss all of that. But the reason that we're able to weather this is because we have a contingency plan, a personal contingency plan, and a business contingency plan. So we can take this as a vacation. We don't have we actually had work to do through all of this. Both of us did, but no meetings or anything else. We literally went to the beach for 3 months and lived at the beach for 3 months through coronavirus because why not? So my question for you, Bill, is, and your situation is different than mine because we're doing two different types of properties for our end game. What is your contingency plan? What is your contingency strategy for when you get into, say, lean times? So let's say back in 2007, 2008, when the market was different. I mean, you could still do flips back then too, but market was different. Let's say that private money wasn't as available then as it is now. What would your contingency plan be now if that happened? And what was your contingency plan then?
Well, I started doing this about 10, 12 years ago, and it just is a very common sense approach to, I call it to money management, not just to contingency, but to money management. And that is the first thing I do is I tithe 10% on whatever comes in. So 10% off the top goes to my church. It could go to community, it could go to a charity, whatever. For me, it happens to go to my church. And then the next thing I do is I pay me. I take 10%, and this is not money. When I say this, a lot of times people question me about, oh, well, you put 10% in your investment fund. I'm like, no. Understand, this is 10% in cash that I put. Now, I suggest you put it in a safety deposit box at the bank, but it is cash so that if anything weird happens, like what we've seen, and your income stops, your life doesn't stop. So you still make your house payments if you have a house payment. You still make car payments if you have a car payment. Your kids still go to school if you're in private school. And all of those things can carry forward. Now, for you were talking about 6 months. I talk about 12. I think before you look at altering any of those funds, you keep it for 12. So 10 in tithe, 10 in paying me, and then 20% goes into the business contingency fund. Now, that's not for a particular property. That is just so that your business still has money to operate on. And then the remaining 60%, you pay your taxes and you do all the other things that you normally do. You pay your bills out of that. But I look at it that way first, because remember, and my aunt, I have my dad and my aunt just have given me such great lessons through life. And my aunt's still with me. But years ago, she made a comment. I talked to her about I was going to loan a buddy of mine some money. And she said, well, just give it to him. I'm like, well, I can't just give it to him. I need it back. And this was probably 25, 30 years ago, easy, probably longer than that. And she goes, well, then if you need it back, don't loan it to him. And I'm like, what? She goes, well, it's a friend. And you just don't need to do that. So either you can afford to lose it. If you can, hand it to him and say, here, and be done with it, and never ask about getting it back. If it's a business loan, that's a different thing, but don't do those with friends or family, because it's going to create hardship. Well, from that, she said, here's the thing. If you go ahead and do that, now they need the money because they're having a financial problem. If you go ahead and do it, and you're in a position like you're telling me that you're in at this particular moment, it's a little bit of a problem financially to do it. Now, you can do it, but it's a pain in the rump. Then what's going to happen is you're going to take their financial issue and it's going to become your financial issue. And if you're in that position, you can't help anybody if something comes along where you really do desperately need to help somebody, and now you can't do it because you did this. And it just really hung with me, and it has stuck with me through the years. So I look at things very differently than I did back then. And so I look at, here's this contingency that I'm building for my life. So 10% tithe, 10% going into paying me. And again, that's not investment money. That's not anything. That is cash, so that I can't imagine things get weirder than they have been. But if things got really bizarre, and really I think about this for your spouse, and in my case for my kids, so that if anything were to happen to me, my attorney knows where the lockbox is, how to get into the lockbox, and my kids would be touching base with him, or he would be touching base with them and say, okay, your dad's got some cash over here, so that the expenses that they're going to have, that they would be not prepared for, and expenses that they're going to have that are going to start happening immediately. Not life insurance money, because typically that you're not going to get that in 24 hours. This is, hey, you know what? We need to go buy groceries. So now here's a place for them to go be able to do that. And what you do is you set your family up for, should anything happen to you, you also take a ton of pressure off of them going through what would obviously be a tough time for them emotionally, but now you keep it from being a tough time on them financially. And it's just planning. That's all it is. The Bible tells us that not only should we tithe, but it also says that we should be not just taking care of our kids, but financially, we should be taking care of our grandkids, but because that's the type of leader that we should be for our family. So, just trying to do that more and more day to day and be better at that.
Let's take a quick break, and then you're down to 40% here. We've got 10 for tithe, 10 for you, and 20% for business. I want to hear about the other 60%, and then I'm going to tell a similar version, but I've got two different halves to that. But let's take a quick break, and we'll cover that.
You are watching the Investor Guys podcast.
Live the resort lifestyle every day with Cayman K. The perfect pieces for every wardrobe. Shop the entire Cayman K collection and find your favorites. Find all our styles at CaymanK.com.
ReallyKevin.com. Weekly recorded coaching sessions. Learn, grow, find resources, opportunities and more. You'll find it all at ReallyKevin.com. Absolution X. Lifestyle apparel like no other. Only at AbsolutionX.com. Get yours.
And we are back. And just before the break, we were talking about how Bill has got his 40% laid out. He still has 60% that he has to explain to us. And then I'm going to explain how I do it, because I do it with two different sides. And I actually, I'll explain it in a minute. Tell us the other 60% that you've got, Bill.
Okay, so the other 60% literally covers everything else. So if you've got mortgage payments, tax payments, car payments, private school payments, you want to take trips, need to go buy new furniture, whatever it happens to be, that 60% covers everything else. And if you do it in the order as we looked at, you will adjust the everything else to fit into the 60%. And that's an important process. Most people look at, I do a lot of financial consulting with people that get into a situation where they're struggling with being able to handle their bills on a regular basis. And the first thing I ask them, I said, well, are you tithing? Are you giving back any? Well, no, Bill, I'm not doing that because I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I can't do that too. And I'm like, yeah, but here's the thing. That is a universal law. Whether you look at it as a Christian law like I do because it's part of the Bible, whether you look at it as a success law because every self-help motivational success book since time immemorial has said you got to give back. It is a universal law that God set in place that you have to give back to the world, to the community, to the universe.
Share. You're not just giving back. You're sharing.
I'm blessed with whatever it is. I'm blessed. I'm giving back accordingly. And you do that first. It's the same thing. And it's a slight deviation here. I'm really a fan. Don't think we'll ever get there. I'm a big fan of the flat tax because I think everybody, if you make $500 a year, you should pay taxes on that. But your tax burden shouldn't be any lighter, any heavier than somebody making $500 million a year. It should be both based on a flat percentage, my opinion, and 10% is
my opinion also.
You know why. So I just look at that and I go, okay, so I'm giving back. So I suggest to you, if you're not, if you start doing that, you do that first. And then you'll find that you have a way to manage, and everything else tends to work out. Now, being a Christian, one of the things that I teach when I'm like I've taught Dave Ramsey's program. I haven't taught it in a while, but when you look at Financial Peace University, one of the things is if I am giving back, then my 90% plus God's help gets me further than 100% on my own. And that's one of the things that I believe to my core. We have the ability to make things work when we prioritize them. So the priority for me is always tithe first, pay yourself second, keep some money back for your business, and then you've got the 60, and the 60 covers everything else. Whatever it is that doesn't fall into that comes into the 60. And if you have to adjust things so that the 60, so they fit into the 60 appropriately, then you adjust things. But if you work in a formula like that, you don't wake up and you're not panicked when things change. And when your refrigerator goes out, it doesn't freak you out or anything. You just go, okay, inconvenient, not so much from a money standpoint, but I got to go take the time to go buy one, that kind of stuff. So, and you, sir, let us hear about the.
I'm actually going to start on what makes my money, because I have multiple separate budgets. So most of my strategies are buy and hold. Each one of my properties has its own budget, and it does for you. You understand that, okay? We have a budget that we put together, how much we expect to pay for everything on that property, how much we expect to get for a profit. Now, built into my expenses on each property, I have contingency. So I estimate more than what I expect I'm going to need for maintenance. I estimate more than what I'm going to need for taxes, more than what I'm going to need for insurance. I put that additional money every single month into a trust fund that's earmarked for that property. Now, it's not multiple different funds. It's multiple different accounts. It's one account, and there is an accounting of how much each property has in its contingency. Now, if need be, if I have a super, super expensive emergency for one property, I can borrow from another property, but I will pay that property back from that property. Each one of my property is self-contained in that they are their own trust. The trust is the address of the property. So if something happens to one property, it's not taking down the other properties. Now, those properties feed my company. The profits that I make from those properties don't come to me. They go to my corporation. The money from the corporation pays for me, essentially. The houses that I live in, even my own personal house, is owned by my corporation. The vehicles that I drive every day that are newer, are company cars. They are registered to my corporation. The vehicles that I have in my collection, because I'm a big car collector, those are actually in a family trust. By having the corporation pay for all of these bills, I'm able to pay myself less every single month. So my tax burden isn't as great. However, out of the money that I pay myself, okay, I give 10%, and this is also on the corporate level. We give a lot, more than 10%, to charity and to nonprofit organizations. On my own personal level, I give 10% plus to charity, to church, to whatever else it is. I put at least 10%, usually 20% aside just for whatever's needed. It goes into a savings account. It's there so I can tap into it at any particular time. I don't plan on ever using it for money, for investing or anything else. My corporation feeds that machine right now. When you're first starting out, you will need your own personal money to get all of that started. Right now, my corporation feeds that machine to where it can just keep going and going and going. So the money that I get is going to that. My other roughly 70%, I get to use on fun things that I want. A new boat, a new car, a new RV, new motorcycles, new dresses, new experiences for my family, for my daughter. My daughter's not in school yet, but when she is, that'll pay for her school. We'll put money aside for her college. There's actually different states have different programs. Florida is one of them, where we can put money into an account that earns interest every single year for her college. No limit to the amount of money that we can put in. So part of that 80%, 70% will go to that. But I use every single income source has its own budget, and it has its own way of feeding up and feeding up and feeding up without being dependent upon something else. So again, if I have an issue, if a property is damaged by fire beyond where I'm able to repair it, it's not going to affect the profitability of anything else in my portfolio of properties because it is separate. I will just crush that property, be done with it. It won't matter because it had its own budget. It's basically like losing a grape off of a bunch of grapes. Okay. And it may seem like a big deal when you're first starting out, but what I will make from insurance on that property will cover the cost of that property, and I will replace that with another grape, in another property. But that is how I have my life organized for contingency, for making sure that I can make it through the good times and the bad times. As long as I still have money in the bank, I'm safe. As long as I still have money coming in from my corporations, I'm safe. Corporations are paying for my basic necessities of life, and there are ways to do that legally and ethically. And I am paying my taxes like I am supposed to legally do. I don't ever recommend not paying your taxes or looking for loopholes to not pay your taxes, but there are right ways to not pay more than you need to pay. It's actually a whole course for another time, but that is how I do my contingency. So that is why, getting back to what we led into at the beginning of this show, I am absolutely blown away at large companies like Lucky Jeans, who undoubtedly makes a lot more money than Bill and I put together, having to declare bankruptcy because their revenues for the last 3.5 months have dropped. Companies like General Nutrition Company, GNC, I think Victoria's Secret went through reorganization. Somebody was telling me something else the other day that I couldn't believe. It was a big company, filed Chapter 13. This is important. Now, we've recommended this book before, both Bill and I know if he's doing Dave Ramsey, he's done it a million times over there too. Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. There is a budget in there that you can apply to your life, that you can apply to your business. Okay. In fact, there's a budget that you can apply to your life that will allow you to start building your business. If you have not read that book already, absolutely get it. If you're not a big reader, it is available on tape and CD. Okay.
Yeah, and it's like a hour and a half, maybe. I mean, it's a small book that is nothing but pure gold.
Yes, it is. It is, and it's interesting. It's not going to lose you. There is a story that keeps you engaged throughout the entire thing. It is absolutely worth picking up on Amazon and owning a copy and sharing it, because once you read it, you will want to share that book. But I can't recommend anything at this point regarding this situation, anything more than The Richest Man in Babylon.
Excellent book. And there's just some there's some basics out there you need to get a hold of. Obviously you need to read Think and Grow Rich if you hadn't done that yet. You need to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad if you haven't done that yet.
Cash Flow Quadrant is also good, but for your own personal development, start with Richest Man in Babylon. Yeah. Then start growing. One of the books that I recommend all the time is Cash Flow Quadrant, but understanding that is leading you into business, and that's what you need to read before you're going to start your business. But reading assignments, I think if you're talking about a first book, Richest Man in Babylon, absolutely. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. A lot of those others, we're done with the show.
Hey, thanks for being with us today. Make sure you join us. We're going to be doing some lifestyles of the rich and famous, or at least rich and famous in our families. So
yes. That's going to be next week. Our next show that we're going to do, I want to talk about some of the, because I'm not bailing out, but I'm transitioning from Central Florida to Palm Beach, but we still have projects here. I wanted to go over some of because I've got a diverse types of projects that we're working on here. I wanted to go over some of those and maybe even do a project by product because some of them are pretty extensive. And maybe even cover the strategies that I use and Bill would use for the same type of thing. And we'll cover that on Wednesday. We'll see all of you Wednesday. Happy investing. Bill, have a great day. I'll talk to you later.
See you. Thanks everybody for joining us on the Investor Guys podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the Investor Guys podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and stay updated on the latest trends and insights in the world of real estate investing. Also, don't forget to check us out and see all of our episodes at theinvestorguyspodcast.com. Email us, contact@investorguyspodcast.com. Remember, the key to financial success lies in staying informed and taking action. Stay tuned for our next episode, and until then, happy investing.